All right, welcome back. This is presentation one of chapter 11, which is on the presidency. And of course, the presidency is, again, one of the major constitutional institutions of the government, of the federal government, that's elaborated in Article 2 of the Constitution. So let's jump in. These, again, are the key topics that we're going to address in this chapter. Again, I will not offend your intelligence by reading them off to you. I assume you can read. I'll give you a couple of seconds to look that over. And then we're on to the second slide, the learning objectives. And again, I'll give you a few seconds to look that over. These are the things we expect you to be able to do, having read this chapter. All right, let's move in. So what government does and why it matters. In 1906, Congress passed the Antiquities Act in a time, again, like now, of relative partisan polarization. It was passed during Theodore Roosevelt's second term. He was William McKinley's vice president, assumed office really early in McKinley's term following his assassination. The law was intended to protect prehistoric Native American ruins and artifacts in the American West by presidential proclamation and without congressional action. Theodore Roosevelt signed the legislation into law, and he was the first president to use a presidential proclamation to that effect, proclaiming Devil's Tower in South Dakota a national monument. Roosevelt had also used the law to declare the Grand Canyon a protected site. All but 4 presidents have used the act to employ presidential proclamations to protect Native American lands. The only presidents who didn't were Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and George Herbert Walker Bush. Incidentally, all of them are Republicans. Barack Obama used the law to establish the Bears Ears National Monument in Utah. The declaration was a culmination of years of advocacy by the Navajo, Hopi, Ute, Zuni, and Ute, Mountain Ute, sovereign Native American tribes who had extensively mapped the areas and gathered oral histories on Native use of the land for religious shrines, traditional hunting grounds, and other important historical and cultural events. The monument land included over 100,000 Native American sites, including petroglyphs and burial grounds. As president, Obama invoked the Antiquities Act more than 26 times, which was a record, passing Theodore Roosevelt's 18 monuments. Donald Trump took unprecedented action in reversing that. He became the first president to invoke the Antiquities Act to reduce the scale of a national monument. In responding to lobbying efforts by the fossil fuel industry, Trump reduced the size of the Bears Ears National Monument by 85%. Republican lawmakers in western states have long opposed federal control over state lands, arguing that states should have greater control over their own resources. Trump's declaration was a huge blow to Native Americans who vowed to fight the action by any means necessary. With Russell Begay, president of the Navajo Nation, complaining that the United States had already taken millions of acres of my people's land. So the fate of the Bears Ears National Monument has been caught between differing presidential actions, but Sean Chapus, chair of the Ute tribes, believes the land is an important part of the identity and cultural heritage of Native Americans. So the nature of presidential power, executive orders and proclamations have given presidents enormous discretion to change policy unilaterally, but those changes can also quickly be reversed in times when partisan control of government changes. So upon being sworn into office, President Biden ordered a review of the boundaries of the Bears Ears Monument by his newly appointed Secretary of the Interior, who was former New Mexico Representative Deb Haaland, who was the first Native American to serve as a cabinet-level secretary in the federal government. And Biden has subsequently returned the monument land to its former borders. So, looking at the foundations of American presidency, at independence, Americans were fearful of placing too much power in one person's hands, which they had experienced as colonial subjects of the British monarchy. However, their first experiment with a national government, the Articles of Confederation, they came to recognize and appreciate the need for an energetic executive capable of acting quickly and decisively in times of emergency. So another important aspect is, how do you assess presidential power? Presidents are empowered by democratic political procedures and by their ability to expand the institutional resources available to presidents to manage an increasingly large and diverse nations. So presidents today, particularly in the post-World War II era, are the one person in American government that have to be seen controlling and in control of an entire constitutional institution of government. So presidents sit atop the chain of command of the entire executive branch of government, which is a complex system of bureaucratic agencies and organizations created by Congress to help the president in executing his or her constitutional responsibility to take care that all laws are faithfully executed. Presidents can influence the direction of government through the appointment process of executive branch managers and of federal judges and justices. They use their appointment authority widely to place people in positions of power who share their vision of government. They set the tone for the federal government, just as Presidents Obama, Trump, and Biden did in their actions, in the conflict over Bears Ears Monument. The framers believed we needed an active chief executive who would make federal government more effective and more efficient. In these presentations, we'll learn about both the powers of the presidents and the constitutional constraints that the framers placed on executive authority to keep the presidency accountable to the people. So presidential power is rooted in the Constitution. Article 2 of the Constitution establishes the office of the presidency with what is known as, again, the vesting clause. The vesting clause is kind of that opening sentence of each of Articles 1, 2, and 3. Article 2, Section 3 imposes the responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. The President's oath of office also obligates the President to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. The Constitution is somewhat vague on the limits to presidential authority to take actions in the event of threats to constitutional government. For example, in 1861, the newly inaugurated President Abraham Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus on the grounds that the suspension was necessary to secure the Capitol. In response to critics of his actions, Lincoln asked, "Are all the laws but one to go unexecuted, and the government itself to go to pieces, lest that one be violated? Even in such a case, would not the official oath be broken if the government should be overthrown when it was believed that disregarding that single law would tend to preserve it?" So presidents enjoy several types of powers: expressed, implied, and delegated powers. And presidents also enjoy what some scholars have characterized as inherent power. So express powers, again, these are those powers that are clearly delineated within the Constitution. So Article 2 established the institution of the presidency, describes the qualifications and powers of office. And again, in order to serve as president, you have to be at least 35 years of age. And I believe you have to be a natural-born citizen. These are also, the express powers are also known as enumerated powers. And they are specifically authorized in the language of the Constitution. And some of those express powers include the power of commander-in-chief, the judicial power, diplomatic authorities, executive authorities, the legislative agenda-setting authority, and the legislative power of the veto. Now, again, we talked a little bit about the veto in the discussion with Congress. Here is sort of a slide that describes the veto process. And again, remember, presidents early on only vetoed legislation because they believed it was unconstitutional. With Andrew Jackson, presidents increasingly began vetoing and threatening the use of a veto simply because they disagreed with it on policy grounds. And again, as ideology began to play a bigger and bigger role in the governing process, that threat of the veto became a much bigger part of the process. So a bill is passed by both houses of Congress. It's presented to the president. The bill is reviewed by special assistants, the Office of Management and Budget, relevant department heads, key legislative leaders in the president's party, key lobbyists. Again, if no action is taken within 10 days while Congress is adjourned, the bill dies. If no action after 10 working days, again, the bill is given a legal designation and effectively will become a law. If the bill is acceptable to the president signs and usually does so in a public ceremony. These days they have a bunch of pens. They'll do part of their signature, hand it off to a supporter. It's sort of one of those things that you can do. Usually the bill has the engraved that used on this date to sign the blank act. If the bill is vetoed, it goes back to Congress, and Congress has the option of overriding the bill, but it requires a 2/3 vote of both houses. Now, what's significant there is almost always, members of the president's own party would have to join in on an override, and that doesn't happen all that often. So long as the president remains popular within the party and with voters of his or her party, a veto override is very difficult for a member of their party to support. It did happen quite a bit. The last kind of ride we had where there were a lot of bills that were overridden by Congress was in the waning days of the George W. Bush administration, where, again, if you remember, by that point, the Iraq War was very unpopular. And you also had, again, the subprime mortgage meltdown. Bush vetoed several things, and members of his own party joined in overriding him on several occasions. So it doesn't happen often, but, and it really is a symptom of a weakened president. And oftentimes presidents in their second term, if things are going bad, nationally, members of his own party may just kind of say, you know what, I've got to go in another direction. And so that really can be symptomatic of what we call a lame duck presidency. So that's all for this presentation. When we come back, we will continue discussing presidential power. I'll see you next time.